Good morning. Had a little bit of an off week this week because we didn't have services last week. So lucky me, I already had a sermon prepared. It's been kind of a back and forth kind of week for us. We had some really great things happen and then some not so great things happen. We've kind of been flopping back and forth on the extremes. As you know, as probably most of you know, we've been trying to sell our house in Texas to not have that mortgage. And we had gotten an offer. Yay. Probably already know what's coming. They pulled out. Not fun. This is not my kind of planned intro. But we're here today to talk about our relationship to the Father. And this includes times when we don't understand what He's doing. I mean, we're sitting here in our living room saying, why did He even bring someone to say they wanted to buy it? And this is compared to what some people in the world face. Small potatoes. But for us, living here, it's kind of a big deal. We don't always understand what the Father is up to. If you grew up as a child, chances are you didn't always understand what your Father was up to. But how we view our relationship to God the Father will affect our worldview. It will affect how we view ourselves. It will affect how we view someone pulling out of the house to you. It will affect our view and thoughts on why we feel like we do. When I was younger, there were two belts in my house. One belonged to my father, one belonged to my mother. My mother's belt was one of these dinky little braided leather nothing belts, maybe about that wide. Yeah. And when we got in trouble, when we were older, not older, a little bit older, when we got in trouble, and it was only her around, you get us thinking, with her belt. Well, her belt didn't really hurt that much. I was wise enough not to say that it didn't hurt that much. My father's belt was much wider and all leather. About that big, to me it might as well be that thick. That one hurt. And when we got in trouble, and it required punishment, and it was Dad's turn, we got his belt. Like I said, I'll rephrase this. No. I was not dumb enough to ever mention to anyone that my mom's belt was not hurt. My brother was not less effective. Okay, don't get me wrong. Kid's smart, guy's smart, hard worker, great guy. But we were in the kitchen right just after he had gotten in trouble and gotten a spanking from my mom. And he came around the corner. He's like, you know what? Mom's belt doesn't even hurt. Probably know where this is going. I, being highly intelligent, kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going there. I just wasn't going there. But in my head, I'm thinking, this is not going to go well. Because, it doesn't even hurt. No, it's not a big deal. He's in junior high. He thinks he knows all that. Maybe he's in fifth grade. We walk around the kitchen corner. My mom's standing there. So she informs him that, first of all, that's not the point. Second of all, she will no longer be giving spankings. Yeah. Like I said, I didn't say anything. I'll say it. When we're younger, when we're little kids, Hayden and Liam's age, don't always understand what Daddy is up to, what Father is up to. He didn't understand why we had to move. He doesn't understand why we're playing it safe for a long time. These are thoughts of children. These are normal thoughts. He doesn't always understand why he's being punished. Sometimes I don't understand why I'm being punished. But sometimes we do need correction. Even now. It doesn't matter if you're 2, it doesn't matter if you're 20, it doesn't matter if you're 8. Sometimes we still need correction. Even when we don't understand why or how or what the purpose of it is. And so if we can change our view to see God as the loving Father that He is, it can help us to accept the outcomes even when we don't understand the outcomes. See, we serve a Father who loves us and who, even though He sometimes must punish us and sometimes cannot let us do whatever we want and sometimes will not give us what we want, even when we're looking at it and say, this is a good thing to give me, why can't I have something good? And he goes, this gumball is a good thing, why can't I have it? Sorry. I'm not going to explain it to you right now. But we serve a Father who loves us, and who has given everything for us. For me, this is a little bit easier to understand than some people. The reason that it is easier for me to understand than some people is because I had a great dad. And I had a great mom. Yes, they were strict. And yes, we got the belt sometimes. But I had really great parents. I'm not ashamed to say that. Some people, this is harder to understand. Because your father wasn't great. Or he wasn't there. Or he wasn't nice. I've had great friends with terrible dads. I've had friends whose dads walked out on them. I've had friends whose dads abused them. And it has warped their view of God because God is a father. But God is not a father like our human father. As wonderful and as great as my dad is, God is far beyond him. And so for us to stop and take sometimes several steps back and re-envision what it means to have a good father. Once we do that, we can reevaluate our relationship with him and learn how to accept whatever action he is taking for our lives. Now, for some people, this is going to be really, really hard to do. But it's also going to be very, very important to do. And so today, as you can see, we're talking about our relationship with God the Father. And we're going to talk about the difficult parts, we're going to be talking about the great parts, But we need to understand going into this that God as our Father is not like our human father. Even if you had a great one, God is not like your great human father. If you had a terrible one, God is not like your human father. He is perfect. He is love. He is one who gives everything. In Hebrews chapter 12, starting in verse 3, we write, "For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. You have not yet resisted the bloodshed, striving against sin, and you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as sons. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens, and scourges every son whom he receives. If you endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. For what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? For they indeed for a few days chastened us, as seemed best to them, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward, it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." Sometimes, punishment and correction is really hard to handle, really hard to deal with. That's why I think he starts off in this section saying, consider him, talking about Christ. Consider him who endured hostility from sinners against himself. Not even from the loving Father. But Christ endured the hostility from sinners, from people who hated him against himself, who did not look out for his best interests, who were not out to help him. That's who Christ endured hostility from. And yet he goes on to say, our Father corrects us because of his love for us. And if he doesn't, if he just lets us go and do whatever he wants, we're not really children. It would take a great deal of hatred or apathy or not caring, certainly not love, for me to allow my children to do whatever they want. But they're having fun. They're enjoying themselves. They like it. When we lived in Lubbock, Texas, going to school, Hayden was about 2 years old. And we were emptying the dishwasher. Nothing normal. Nothing strange. Just emptying the dishwasher, putting everything up. Well, Hayden, somehow, managed to walk up right next to the dishwasher and pull something out. So me and Danielle are on the other side of the dishwasher. We look over, and Hayden has our biggest knife. This thing is literally this big. I'm not exaggerating. And he's sitting there, this heavy as can be. Look what I got. So we're terrified. Okay, Hayden. Give me the knife. Is it okay? We didn't want to scare him because we didn't want something bad. We corrected him gently. We needed to correct him gently in that case. When Danielle was younger, if any of the kids would either try to run away in the parking lot or into the street or something, her mom would grab them by the hair and yank them back. Painful. They didn't do it again. You know why? She brought them pain, right? didn't run out and get hurt or killed. Now, I know chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. But they're happy. But I need this. This is a good thing, right? But that job was paying for my family. It was a good thing. But selling this house would be a great step to cement ourselves here and start going forward. Right? But if I don't have to deal with all this garbage in the background of my life, I could serve better. Really could. There are things worse than punishment. There are worse things than pain. There are worse things than death. If I refuse to raise my children to be the man God calls them to be, I could end up with cowards. I could end up with bullies. I could end up with unbelieving children. There are worse things than some pain. Now, some people experience punishment from a power position, where the parent is lording over their power, lording over their strength. You will fall in line because I'm stronger than you. It's not how God works. God's punishment, God's correction is never based from hatred or anger or you will fall in, I am stronger than you. It's not from a position of I'm going to lord this power over you. Now, did God punish Israel in his wrath in the Old Testament? Yes. But it was always for the express purpose of bringing them back to him, of waking them up and bringing them back. It was done out of love, because he wanted what was best for them. He wanted them to be his children, to be his people, so that he could be their God and bless them. And he does the same with us. God is the same forever and ever. He is the beginning, he is the end. God does not change. He desires us to be his, to come to him, to be his people, to be his holy nation, to be his priesthood, to be his loved children, and for him to be our God. And he will use whatever means necessary. For they, for a few days, chastened us as he says to them, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness. And it's because of this, it's because of this love and care that includes punishment sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'll make something clear. Not everything bad that happens to you, I've said this before, not everything bad that happens to you is God coming down on you. We live in a fallen world with bad things. But we would be wise to recognize when God is trying to wake us up. And it's because of this, because of his love and care, that we work to follow God the best we can. We want to please a Father that loves us. My children want to please me and Danielle because we love them. And so in verse 12, The Hebrew writer says, "Therefore strengthen the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, that what is lame may not be dislocated, but rather be healed. Pursue peace with all people, and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Looking carefully, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled. Lest there be any fornicator or profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place for repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears." The writer says, are you going to be ungrateful like Esau, who threw it all away for one meal? Esau was not a man of righteousness. He was a man who sold out his birthright. And pursuing peace, pursuing holiness, pursuing righteousness helps us to not become that. Because we are not that. We are not like Esau. In the very next section, the writer contrasts who and what we are with who and what Esau was. Because while Esau was a sellout who sold his birthright, who rejected and walked away, he writes in verse 18, "But you have not come to the mountain that may be touched, and that burned with fire, and to blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of the trumpet and the voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that the word should not be spoken to them any more. For they could not endure what was commanded. And if so much as a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned or shot with an arrow. And so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I am exceedingly afraid and trembling." This is the type of situation Israel was in when it received the covenant. When God came down on the mountain to give them the law and make the covenant and make them his people, it was done in such a way that Israel was terrified. And at first, God was speaking to all of Israel until they cried out and said, "Don't do it anymore. We're going to die if we hear any more of this. Like, we will curl up and die if we hear you speaking more. Just take Moses and send him, and we'll send him up, and you talk to him, and he'll tell us what you want. Please." They were terrified.